I drove the last nail into the crown molding Saturday morning, stepped back, and let myself feel it. 6 months of work, every board true, every corner square. The December cold had settled into the house overnight, but the River Rock fireplace was already crackling, throwing heat across the oak floors I'd sanded by hand. Wood smoke mixed with the smell of fresh varnish. Linda was in the kitchen arranging shrimp cocktail on her good crystal, humming something I didn't recognize. Guests would arrive in an hour. I set my carpenter's level on the mantel, bubble centered perfectly, and went to help her with the ice. That's when I saw the paperwork on the hallway table. Refinance application, my signature at the bottom, except I'd never signed it. And there, listed as co-investor, Marcus Gaines. The front door opened. Cold air rushed in, rattling the new windows. Linda called out, bright and false, "Marcus, you're early!" He stepped inside, holding a bottle of wine, and that expensive pen of his, the one that catches light like a promise. He smiled at me, extended his hand. I looked at the papers, looked at him, looked at my wife. The ice in the bucket started to melt. The party filled up fast. 30, maybe 40 people packed into the living room, spilling into the kitchen, admiring the exposed beams I'd salvaged from a barn demolition in Clark County. Voices layered over each other. Someone put music on. Linda moved through the crowd like she was running for office, touching elbows, laughing too loud at things that weren't funny. I stood near the fireplace, holding a beer I hadn't opened, watching Marcus work the room. He knew where everything was: the bathroom, the coat closet, the good scotch Linda kept on the top shelf. He poured himself 3 fingers like he owned the place. Maybe he thought he did. Ethan found me around 5. My son, 35 now, civil engineer out of Denver, had flown in that morning. He looked tired. Good tired, like he'd been working on something that mattered. "House looks incredible, Dad." He touched the mantel, ran his hand along the grain. "This the walnut from Grandpa's shop?" "Last piece he ever milled." Ethan nodded, picked up the level, checked the bubble out of habit, set it back down. "So, who's the guy Mom keeps introducing as her investment partner?" The words landed wrong. Investment partner. I took a pull from the beer I'd finally opened. "That's Marcus, her ex-boyfriend from before me." "She invited her ex to your housewarming party?" "Apparently." Ethan's jaw tightened. He had his mother's eyes, but my hands, scarred knuckles, calluses in the right places. "Dad, did you agree to some kind of refinance?" "No." "Then why is his name on that paperwork in the hall?" Before I could answer, Linda tapped a champagne flute with a knife. The room went quiet. She stood in the center of the living room, Marcus beside her, both of them smiling like they'd won something. "Everyone," she said, voice bright and sharp as breaking glass, "I have a wonderful announcement. Vernon and I have brought in a new partner to help grow our equity in this beautiful home. Please welcome Marcus Gaines. He's been instrumental in helping us plan our future." Polite applause, a few confused glances. Someone's wife whispered something to her husband. Marcus raised his glass. "Happy to be part of this," he said, smooth as diesel on ice. "Linda's shown me every corner of this place. It's got real potential." I felt my hands go cold. Ethan leaned close. "Dad, what the hell is going on?" I don't know yet, but I did know, or I was starting to, which the party dragged on another 2 hours. People asked me about the renovation, how long it took, what kind of wood I used, whether I'd done the electrical myself. I answered on autopilot. My mind was in the hallway, on that signature that wasn't mine, on the way Marcus moved through my house like he'd already measured it for demolition. Around 7, Linda cornered me in the kitchen. Her smile was gone. "You're being rude," she said, low enough that no one else could hear. "Marcus came all the way out here to support us, and you're acting like he's some kind of threat." "Support us how, exactly?" "He's helping us diversify, build equity. God, Vern, you're so stuck in the past. This is how people do things now." "People forge their husband's signature on loan documents?" Her face went pale, then red, then cold. "I don't know what you think you saw. I saw my name and his on a refinance I never agreed to." She glanced toward the living room where Marcus was laughing with someone's husband about interest rates. When she looked back at me, her voice was different, harder. "If you can't handle modern partnerships, maybe you're too old-fashioned for this marriage." She walked away before I could respond. I found Ethan on the porch, breath steaming in the December cold. Diesel exhaust from someone's truck hung in the frozen air. Gravel crunched under my boots as I stepped outside. "You leaving?" I asked. "Thought about it." He turned to face me. but I think you might need me to stay. I might. He pulled out his phone, opened his email. I'm going to call a buddy of mine, real estate attorney, just to ask some questions. It's Saturday night. He owes me. Ethan scrolled through his contacts. Dad, when's the last time you checked your bank accounts? Joint ones, I mean. I hadn't. Not in weeks. Inside, someone turned the music up. Linda's laugh cut through the noise, sharp and bright and wrong. Ethan's phone was already ringing. Yeah, this is probably bad. Monday morning, I drove to the credit union. Road salt crunched under my boots in the parking lot. Inside, fluorescent lights buzzed over empty teller stations. Dale Crenshaw sat in his usual booth by the window. Tuesday Ritual moved up a day because I'd called him Sunday night and said I needed help. He had coffee waiting, 2 cups, black, from the diner next door. Let's see what we're dealing with, he said. I spread the papers across the table. Refinance application, loan approval letter, spousal consent waiver, all dated back to October, 2 months ago, while I was finishing the floors. Dale put on his reading glasses, didn't say anything for a long time, just read, flipping pages, occasionally making a note on a legal pad with a pencil he kept behind his ear. The coffee went cold. Finally, he looked up. Vern, this signature isn't yours. I know. I mean, it's not even close. You write like a man who learned cursive with a ruler. This is loopy, feminine almost. He tapped the page. Someone traced your signature from something else and tried to match it. Didn't do a great job. So it's fraud. It's fraud. Dale flipped to the loan approval. And it went through. As of November 15th, this refinance is active. Marcus Gaines is listed as co-investor with a 30% stake in the property. My chest tightened. Can we stop it? Already done. Legal's locked. He set the papers down. But here's the problem. You've got 58 days from the approval date to file a contestation. After that, the deed splits automatically per the loan terms. You'll own 70%, he'll own 30%, and there's not a damn thing you can do about it. I did the math in my head. 58 days from November 15th. That's January 12th. 56 days from today, Dale leaned back. You need a lawyer, a good one, and you need to move fast. By Tuesday afternoon, half the congregation knew. Ruth Kimball, 70 years old, quilter church elder, and the closest thing our town had to a news network, had seen Linda and Marcus together Sunday morning, not at our house, at a property showing on Elm Street, holding hands beside a silver sedan that wasn't mine. She called me before she called anyone else. Professional courtesy. Vern, she said, voice careful and sad. I don't like to gossip, but if a house is on fire, you tell your neighbor. I appreciate it, Ruth. Half the congregation's talking, the other half's pretending they don't know. She paused. Pastor Jim wants to see you. He called it a pastoral check-in, but I think he's worried you're going to do something foolish. I'm not. Good, because foolish won't win this. Another pause. You need anything? Testimony? Witnesses? Someone to sit with you at a lawyer's office? You call me. Thank you. And Vern, that woman doesn't deserve that house. We all know who built it. Wednesday, I sat in Attorney Barnes's office on the second floor of the old Masonic building. Sleet tapped against the windows. My damp wool coat smelled like wet dog. Barnes was 60, gray suit, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of lawyer who'd handled every property dispute in 3 counties for 30 years. He reviewed the documents while I sat across from him, trying not to watch the clock. Finally, he set them down. Good news, this is absolutely fraud. Forged signature, falsified notarization, misrepresentation of consent. You've got a strong case. I waited for the bad news. Bad news. Civil fraud litigation takes 6 to 8 months, maybe longer if they fight discovery. You've got 54 days before the deed transfers. So we can't stop it. We can try for an emergency injunction, but that requires proving immediate irreparable harm, which is hard when you're still living in the house. He folded his hands. There's another problem. The notary seal on this spousal consent waiver, it's real, Glenda Tarver's seal, registered and active, which means either she notarized a forged signature or someone forged her seal too. Can you find out which? I can try. Barnes made a note. But even if we prove forgery, the timeline's the issue. Courts don't move fast, Vern. Fraud cases don't get priority unless there's criminal charges involved, and the DA won't touch this without a full investigation, which takes months. Months. I stared at the sleet coming down outside. metallic taste in my mouth. Fear, maybe, or just the coffee Barnes had offered when I walked in. So what do I do? Barnes took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. Honestly, you've got two choices. Fight this in court and hope we can move faster than the deadline. Or settle with them, negotiate some kind of buyout before January 12th. Settle? It's not ideal, but it's certain. I stood up. Coat still damp, still smelling like wool and failure. I'm not settling. Then we file the injunction tomorrow, and we pray. Outside, the sleet had turned to freezing rain. Dale called me Thursday night, said he'd found something, said I should come to his fishing cabin, bring Ethan if he was still in town. Ethan was. He'd pushed back his flight 3 times already. We drove out Friday morning, 20 minutes past the reservoir, down a gravel road that turned to mud, where the sun hit it. The cabin sat on a small lake, aluminum boat tied to a weathered dock, smoke rising from the chimney. Ice still covered most of the water, but the edges were starting to crack. You could hear it if you listened. Low groans, like the lake was waking up. Dale met us at the door, coffee already percolating inside, that old tin smell mixing with wood smoke and fish bait. Sit, he said. He'd spread property deeds across the kitchen table, 6 of them, all from the last 3 years, all in Vermilion County and the 2 counties west. I pulled these yesterday, Dale said, tapping the first one. Marcus Gaines bought this house in March 2 years ago, foreclosure sale, paid cash, flipped it 6 months later for triple. He moved to the next deed. This one, same thing, foreclosure, cash buy, quick flip. Ethan leaned in. That's not illegal. No, but look at this. Dale pointed to the 3rd deed. Original owner was a widow named Patricia Chen. She'd owned the house 40 years. Then suddenly, there's a refinance in her name. Except her daughter says she never signed it. By the time they figured it out, the house was in foreclosure and Marcus had already bought it. I felt something cold settle in my chest. How many of these are there? 3 that I can confirm, maybe more. Dale pulled out another document, a notarization log. And here's the interesting part. All 3 properties use the same notary for the refinance paperwork. He slid the paper toward me. Glenda Tarver, same name on my spousal consent waiver. Ethan picked up the log, studied it. If she's complicit, we can force her to testify. Conspiracy to commit fraud. That bumps this to criminal. Or, Dale said slowly, Marcus forged her seal, which is a bigger problem for him. I looked at the deeds again. 3 houses, 3 families. Same pattern, same notary, same result. We need to talk to her, I said. Dale smiled. Already did. She's willing to meet. Says she wants to clear her name. Glenda Tarver lived in a duplex on the east side, the kind of place where the mailbox leans and the porch sags in the middle. She answered the door in a housecoat, cigarette burning between her fingers, eyes tired and wary. You're Holloway, she said. Yes, ma'am. She looked past me at Dale and Ethan. You bring a whole damn posse? Just people who want the truth. She considered that, then stepped aside. Come in, but I'm not signing anything without my own lawyer present. Inside smelled like stale smoke and microwave dinners. We sat in her living room, plastic-covered couch, TV on mute, cat watching us from the windowsill. Glenda stubbed out her cigarette, lit another one. I notarized a lot of documents for Marcus Gaines, she said. He paid me $50 per signature. Always cash, always in person, but I never notarized anything for you, Mr. Holloway. Not once. You're sure? I keep logs. I cross-reference. It's my job. She pulled a binder from under the coffee table, flipped it open, rows of signatures, dates, addresses. See, November 3rd, I notarized a deed transfer for Marcus. November 8th, a power of attorney for someone else. November 15th, the date on your paperwork. I was in Indiana, visiting my sister. I've got gas receipts, motel bill, the whole thing. Ethan leaned forward. So someone used your seal without permission. That's what I'm saying. Glenda's hand shook slightly as she reached for her coffee. I reported my seal stolen back in September. Filed a police report and everything. Got a new one issued October 1st. Do you still have the report? Copy's in the binder. Dale took it, scanned the page. This is good. This is very good. Glenda looked at me. I don't know what Marcus did to you, Mr. Holloway, but he's been using my name to do it to other people for 2 years. If you're going after him, I'll testify. I'll bring every log, every receipt, every damn thing I've got. I felt something shift. Not hope exactly, more like the ice cracking on the lake, the first sign that winter might end. "Thank you," I said. She nodded. "One more thing. Marcus has an ex-wife, Diane, lives up in Richland County. Heard through the grapevine that he did the same thing to her, forged papers, stole her house. You might want to talk to her too." By the time we got back to Dale's cabin, the sun was starting to set. The ice on the lake had split in a long, jagged line, dark water showing underneath. A robin called from somewhere in the trees, first one I'd heard all winter. Ethan pulled out his phone. "I'm filing for an emergency injunction first thing Monday. Fraud conspiracy, pattern of criminal behavior, forged notary seal. This might actually work." Dale poured 3 fingers of whiskey into tin cups. "To Glenda Tarver." We drank. Then my phone buzzed. Text from a number I didn't recognize. "Bank of Vermilion has frozen your refinance pending fraud investigation. Loan approval suspended. No disbursements authorized." "Officer Huang." I showed it to Dale. He read it. Smiled. "Well, looks like Marcus just lost his payday." Ethan pulled up Linda's number. Stared at it. "Should we tell her?" "She'll find out." I looked out at the lake. The crack in the ice had widened. Water moving underneath, dark and cold and patient. Let her find out the same way I did. My phone buzzed again. Linda, this time. 3 words. "We need to talk." Marcus called me Tuesday morning. Said we should meet. Said there were things we could work out man to man, without lawyers making it complicated. I told him to pick the place. He chose the diner on Route 9, the one with the chrome siding and the booths that smell like burnt coffee and 40 years of grease. I got there first. Sat facing the door. Dale walked in 5 minutes later, sat 2 booths down with a newspaper he didn't read. Marcus arrived 10 minutes late, driving a black SUV that probably cost more than my truck and tools combined. He wore a cashmere coat, leather gloves, that expensive pen clipped to his shirt pocket like a badge. He slid into the booth across from me, smiled, waved off the waitress. "Vern, thanks for meeting." I didn't say anything. He pulled a folder from his briefcase, set it on the table between us. "Look, I know things got messy. Linda maybe moved a little faster than she should have, but the fundamentals are solid. That house is worth $300,000. Easy. Probably more if we hold it another year." We. Figure of speech. He opened the folder, contract inside, 3 pages, his pen resting on top. "I'm prepared to make this simple. I'll buy out your share, 70% of current assessed value, $210,000, cash. Closes in 30 days, you walk away clean." I looked at the numbers, looked at him. "That's 40% under market. It's also guaranteed. No litigation, no risk, no waiting 6 months to see if a judge agrees with you." He leaned back. "Linda's already agreed to it. She thinks it's the smart play." "Linda's not here." "No, she's at my rental property. Has been since Sunday." He said it casual, like he was commenting on the weather. "She moved her things out while you were at Dale's cabin. Didn't want another confrontation." The diner noise faded. Sizzle of hash browns on the griddle. Someone's country song on the jukebox. All of it distant, like I was underwater. She moved out. "She made a choice, Vern. You can't really blame her. You've been making this harder than it needs to be." Marcus slid the contract closer. $210,000. That's more than you paid for the land, more than you spent on materials. You're walking away with a profit. I spent 6 months building that house, and I'm offering to pay you for it. I looked down at his pen, caught the light the same way it had at the party, when he'd signed the guest book with that same smooth confidence. "You used that pen to forge my signature," I said. His smile didn't change. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Ballpoint, specific ink. Dale had it analyzed. Matches the signature on the spousal consent form. Then Dale should take that to the police." Marcus picked up the pen, clicked it once. "But even if he does, you're still fighting a clock. Your injunction hearing is January 8th. The deed transfer is January 12th. You've got 4 days of margin. And courts don't work fast, Vern. You know that." He was right. I did know that. "So here's reality," Marcus continued. "You can fight this, spend the next 2 months in depositions and courtrooms. Maybe win, maybe lose. Or you take the money, start fresh somewhere else, and stop wasting everyone's time." Dale folded his newspaper. I could see him watching from the corner of my eye. "Linda's already moved on," Marcus said quietly. "Why are you still holding on?" "Because the house was mine. Because I'd cut every board, driven every nail, sanded every floor, because my grandfather's level was still on that mantel. Bubble-centered, proof that some things are built right. But I didn't say any of that. I stood up. I'm not signing. Marcus stayed seated. You're making a mistake. Probably. I walked out. Cold air hit me like a wall. Diesel exhaust from a truck idling in the parking lot. Dale followed me to my truck. That went well, he said. He's not wrong about the timeline. No, but he's scared. You see how he wouldn't let go of that pen? Man who's confident doesn't need a security blanket. I got in the truck, hands shaking on the wheel. Not anger, just the adrenaline bleeding off, leaving me cold and tired. Dale leaned in the window. Go home. Get some rest. We'll figure this out. But home wasn't home anymore. I knew something was wrong when I turned onto my street. Deputy Hayes' cruiser was parked in my driveway. He stood on the porch, hands on his belt, breath steaming in the January cold. I parked, walked up, gravel crunching under my boots, frozen mud in the tire tracks. Vern, he said, not friendly, official. Deputy. He pulled an envelope from his jacket. I'm sorry about this. Court order. Your wife filed a temporary restraining order citing threatening behavior and emotional distress. You're not permitted on the property for 14 days pending a hearing. The words took a second to land. This is my house. It's jointly owned, and she's filed an abandonment claim. Says you left the residence Sunday night and haven't returned. He handed me the envelope. You'll need to schedule an escort if you want to retrieve personal items. The locks have been changed. I looked past him at the front door. New deadbolt, shiny brass, recently installed. I pulled out my key, walked up to the door, tried it anyway, didn't turn. Behind me, Deputy Hayes cleared his throat. Vern, don't make this harder. I stepped back. The door I'd hung myself, fitted to the frame so it wouldn't stick in summer or bind in winter, stayed closed. My house, my work, locked against me. Neighbors were watching. Mrs. Chen across the street, the Millers 2 doors down, curtains moving, faces in windows. The hearing's scheduled for January 10th, Hayes said, 2 days before the deed transfer deadline. I turned to look at him. That's not a coincidence. No, probably not. He looked uncomfortable. For what it's worth, I don't think you're a threat to anybody, but the law's the law. He got in his cruiser, drove away. I stood in my own driveway, cold brass doorknob I'd installed still warm from where I'd tried to turn it, and felt something crack inside me that wasn't ice. At 62, if I lost this house, I lost proof I was still worth something. My hands had built that place. Without it, what did I have left to show? My phone buzzed. Text from Ethan. Dad, where are you? I didn't answer, just got in my truck and drove. Didn't know where I was going until I ended up back at Dale's cabin, staring at the lake through the windshield, watching the ice break apart in the wind. The crack had spread, water showing through, black and deep and final. Deputy Hayes escorted me back to the house Thursday afternoon. Official protocol. I had 30 minutes to collect personal belongings under supervision. Linda wasn't there. Smart. She knew what she was doing. I walked through rooms I'd built with my own hands, feeling like a stranger. The deputy stood by the door, uncomfortable, checking his watch every few minutes. Take your time, he said, within reason. I went to the mantel first, picked up the carpenter's level, solid walnut, brass fittings worn smooth from 3 generations of hands. My grandfather had used it to build the barn where my father learned to work wood. My father had used it to teach me. I'd used it to build this house. The bubble sat perfectly centered between the lines. I wrapped it in a towel, set it by the door. Ethan appeared in the doorway carrying empty boxes. What do you need? Grandfather's toolbox, the photos from my office, clothes for a week. We worked in silence. The deputy watched from the living room, radio crackling occasionally with dispatch traffic. I took the framed picture of my father from the mantel, him standing in front of the barn, hammer in hand, smiling at something out of the frame. Took the watch my mother gave me when I turned 21. Took my work boots from the closet, left the furniture, left the dishes, left the curtains Linda had picked out, the rug we'd bought together, the bed we'd shared for 2 years. Ethan carried a box to the door, stopped. Dad, why aren't you taking the couch you built? I looked at it. Mission style, white oak, mortise and tenon joints, no screws. Took me 3 weeks. Because I built the house, I said. That's what matters. The level sat by the door in its towel, bubbles still centered, still true. We loaded everything into the truck, 15 minutes, start to finish, 2 years of life compressed into 4 cardboard boxes in a toolbox that smelled like oil and sawdust. Deputy Hayes walked us out, locked the door behind us. The new deadbolt clicked into place with a sound like finality. I drove away without looking back. Ruth Kimball called that evening. I was at Dale's cabin, unpacking my grandfather's tools onto the workbench in the shed, when my phone rang. "Vern, how are you holding up?" "I'm managing." "That's what men always say?" I heard the sound of a sewing machine in the background, needle punching through fabric in steady rhythm. "I had the quilting circle over today. You know how women talk when their hands are busy." I can imagine. Margaret Posey was here. She works at the title company downtown. Says she overheard Linda and Marcus last month going over numbers. Fake contractor bids, inflated renovation costs, the whole thing. She thought it was just business talk at the time. I set down the chisel I'd been holding. Would she testify to that? She would. So would Doris Chen. You remember her daughter, Patricia? The one whose house Marcus took? Ruth's machine stopped. "We're not the only ones he's hurt, Vern, and people are starting to remember." How many witnesses do you have?" "3 for certain, maybe 4 if I can get Helen Bradshaw to talk about what she saw at the bank." The machine started again. "But Pastor Jim's getting pressure from some of the elders. Marcus made a sizable donation last year. Some folks think we should stay out of it, let the courts handle it." "What do you think?" "I think the courts are slow and Marcus is fast." She paused. "And I think that house is yours. Everyone knows it. The question is whether we're brave enough to say it out loud." Through the cabin window, I could see the lake. The ice had broken into chunks, floating like scattered pieces of something that used to be whole. A cold rain had started, tapping on the metal roof. "I appreciate what you're doing, Ruth." "Don't appreciate it yet. Just show up when I call." She hung up. Ethan came out to the shed carrying 2 beers, handed me one. We stood there watching the rain, listening to it drum on the roof, smelling wet wood and old motor oil. "Margaret Posey," Ethan said. "That's the woman from the title company?" "Yeah." "And she heard Linda coaching Marcus on fake expenses." "That's what Ruth says." Ethan took a long drink. "Dad, we might actually have enough. Pattern of fraud, forged notary seal, witness testimony to conspiracy. If we can get Pastor Jim to schedule an accountability meeting before the court date." "Jim's getting pressure." "From who?" "People Marcus has bought." I picked up the level again, felt its weight. "Money talks, Ethan, even in church. So we make it talk louder." He pulled out his phone. "Attorney Barnes can file an amended injunction tomorrow. We add the new witnesses, the notary evidence, Margaret's testimony. We bury Marcus in paper before he can bury us." Rain came harder. The shed roof sang with it. I thought about Linda and Marcus's rental property, surrounded by furniture that wasn't hers, sleeping in a bed she'd chosen out of greed instead of love. Thought about Marcus in his cashmere coat, pen in his pocket, checking his watch and calculating margins. Thought about my grandfather's hands on this level, teaching me that some things have to be built straight, or they don't stand at all. "Call Barnes," I said. "Tell him we're not settling." Ethan smiled, started dialing. Outside, the rain turned the mud to soup. The ice on the lake broke into smaller pieces, and somewhere in the trees, barely audible over the weather, a robin called. First one I'd heard all season. Pastor Jim called me Friday morning, said we needed to talk, said it was important. We met at the church, in his office that smelled like old hymnals and lemon furniture polish. He sat behind his desk, hands folded, looking like a man about to deliver bad news. "Vern, I've been hearing things." "I imagine you have." "Marcus Gaines came to see me yesterday. He's concerned about your mental state, says you've been making threats, acting erratically, that you tried to force your way into the house despite a legal restraining order." I felt something cold settle in my chest. I tried my key, once, with a deputy standing right there. That's not how Marcus tells it. Jim leaned back. He's also donated $20,000 to the building fund. Came in Monday, wrote the check right there in the fellowship hall, said he wanted to support our community. He's buying silence. He's being generous. Jim's face tightened. "Look, Vern, I've known you 20 years. You've been a deacon, a volunteer, a faithful member of this church. But some of the elders think we should stay out of this, that it's a private matter between you and your wife." "And you?" He looked at his hands. "I think everyone deserves accountability, but I also think churches aren't courtrooms." Ruth says she has witnesses, people who heard Linda and Marcus planning this. I know. She's been calling me every day. Jim stood up, walked to the window. Rain streaked the glass, turning the parking lot to gray blur. If I schedule an accountability meeting, and I'm not saying I will, it needs to be voluntary. Both parties present, willing to hear each other out. Otherwise, it's just an ambush. Marcus won't come. Then there's no meeting. He turned to face me. Vern, are you asking me to help you, or are you asking me to choose sides? The question hung there between us. I'm asking you if truth matters more than money. Jim flinched. That's not fair. No, probably not. I stood up. But neither is asking me to prove I'm sane while Marcus proves he's generous. I walked out before he could respond. Dale called me an hour later. Said to meet him at the credit union. Said he had something. I found him at his usual booth. Documents spread across the table, coffee gone cold. He looked up when I walked in, eyes bright with the kind of focus that comes from finding something that matters. Glenda Tarver's notary seal, he said. The one that was stolen. I pulled the police report, cross-referenced the dates. And? The seal was reported stolen September 12th. But look at this. He slid a photocopy across the table. Notarization record for Marcus's second property deal. This document was notarized September 24th, 12 days after the seal was reported stolen. I looked at the date, the signature. Glenda Tarver's seal, clear as day. So, Marcus had it. Marcus had it, and he used it. Dale pulled out another record. Here's another one, October 3rd. Another one, October 19th. All using a seal that was officially reported stolen. Can we prove Marcus took it? Not directly, but we can prove someone did, and that someone used it for his deals. Dale leaned forward. Here's the beautiful part. Glenda filed for a new seal October 1st. Different serial number, different registration. Every document after October 1st should have the new seal number. He slid one more page toward me. My spousal consent waiver, dated November 15th, notarized by Glenda Tarver with the old seal number, the stolen one. He didn't know she'd gotten a new seal, I said. He didn't know, and now we can prove he used the stolen one. Dale sat back, satisfied. This isn't just fraud anymore, Vern. This is felony identity theft, felony forgery, and it's a pattern. My phone rang. Attorney Barnes. Vern, you sitting down? Should I be? Glenda Tarver just called me. She's willing to testify, and she's willing to do it on affidavit. Sworn statement, notarized by someone else, admissible in court. He paused. She says Marcus called her yesterday. Tried to pay her $10,000 to disappear for a few weeks. He what? Offered her cash to leave town until after your court date. She recorded the call. Barnes's voice had the kind of edge that comes from finding exactly what you need. Vern, I'm filing an amended emergency injunction this afternoon. Witness intimidation, felony forgery with stolen seal, pattern of criminal behavior across multiple properties. The judge is going to have to take this seriously. Through the credit union window, I watched rain turn to sleet, wet gravel gleaming in the parking lot, someone's truck sliding slightly as they pulled out. How long until we know? Hearings Monday, January 8th. If the judge grants the injunction, the deed transfer gets frozen pending criminal investigation. He paused. But Marcus knows this is coming. He's going to move fast. Dale was already pulling up his phone. I'll call Ruth, get those witnesses locked down. If Marcus is desperate enough to bribe Glenda, he's desperate enough to threaten anyone else who might talk. I thought about Marcus in that diner booth, pen in his pocket, smile never wavering. Thought about how he'd played this game before. How many houses, how many families, how many times he'd won because people were afraid to fight back. Call Ruth, I said. Tell her we need that meeting. Tell Pastor Jim if he won't schedule it, we'll hold it in Dale's cabin and invite everyone ourselves. Dale grinned. Now you're talking. Outside, sleet turned to snow. First flakes of the year melting as soon as they touched the ground. But the temperature was dropping, and winter wasn't done yet. Saturday night, I sat alone at Dale's cabin, staring at the carpenter's level in my hands. The fire had burned down to coals. Outside, snow fell steady and quiet, covering the mud, covering the broken ice on the lake, covering everything until it all looked clean again. Ethan had gone back to the motel to work on the injunction paperwork with Barnes. Dale was home with his wife. And I was here, in a borrowed cabin, holding the only thing I had left from my grandfather, wondering if any of this was worth it. The level was simple. Walnut frame, brass fittings, Liquid-filled vial with a bubble that never lied. My grandfather had taught me to use it when I was 8 years old. Stand it on a board, watch the bubble. If it's not centered, something's wrong. Fix it or build crooked, your choice. I'd spent my whole life trying to build things straight, but sitting there in the dark, I wondered if walking away might be straighter than what I was about to do. Linda was a human being, flawed, greedy, wrong, but human. If I went through with this accountability meeting, if I laid out every piece of evidence in front of the whole congregation, I wouldn't just be proving she'd lied. I'd be destroying her, publicly, permanently. She'd have to leave town. Find a new job. Explain to every future employer why her name showed up in fraud depositions. She'd lose friends, lose reputation, lose everything. And part of me, the part that had loved her once, that had believed her when she said she wanted to build a life together, that part didn't want to be responsible for that. I set the level down on the table. The bubble drifted off center. My phone sat next to it. One call to Barnes, one sentence. I'm settling. And it would be over. Marcus would get his 30%, Linda would keep her dignity, I'd take the money and disappear. No public spectacle, no church meeting, no watching her face collapse when Glenda's testimony proved she'd lied. The cabin door opened. Cold air rushed in, smelling like snow and pine. Ethan stepped inside, stamping his boots, shaking flakes from his jacket. Thought I'd find you here. He sat down across from me, saw the level on the table. You okay? I don't know. He waited. That was something I'd taught him without meaning to, how to wait, how to let silence do the work. I'm thinking about settling, I said finally. Ethan didn't react, just nodded slowly. Why? Because destroying her doesn't fix anything. Maybe not, but letting Marcus win destroys something too. He picked up the level, held it to the light from the coals. You know what I remember about Grandpa? He told me once that a level doesn't care about your feelings. It just tells you what's true, and once you know what's true, you have to decide what to do about it. I know what's true. Do you? Ethan set the level down. Because I think you're confusing truth with cruelty. Telling the truth about what Linda did, that's not destroying her. That's just refusing to lie for her. I looked at him. 35 years old, civil engineer, my son from a marriage I'd already failed once. Your mother used to say I loved wood more than people, I said. Maybe she was right. Maybe she was wrong. Ethan leaned forward. You know why I flew out here, Dad? Not because of the house, because when I asked about that refinance at the party, you didn't lie to me. You didn't make excuses. You just said, I don't know yet, and then you went to find out. So that's not a man who loves wood more than people. That's a man who refuses to build on a crooked foundation. He stood up, walked to the window, snow coming down heavier now, covering the dock, covering the boat. If you let this go, every man Marcus cheated will know that fraud works. Every woman he scammed will know that crying and making threats is enough to make good men back down. Is that the legacy you want? The question hit like a hammer. I thought about Patricia Chen's daughter, watching her mother's house get stolen. Thought about Diane Gaines, Marcus's ex-wife, who'd lost everything and had no one to fight for her. Thought about the next person Marcus would target, the next family he'd destroy, because men like him only stop when someone makes them. I don't want to hurt her, I said quietly. I know, but Dad, she hurt you. She forged your name. She helped Marcus steal your house. She filed a restraining order claiming you threatened her when all you did was try your own door. Ethan turned from the window. You're not hurting her. You're just stopping her from hurting you. Outside, the snow fell harder. The lake was disappearing under white. The cracks in the ice, all that broken water I'd been watching for weeks, covered over like they'd never existed. But they were still there, under the snow, still broken, still waiting for spring. I picked up the level again, held it flat on the table. The bubble settled back to center, perfect and true. Grandpa used to say something else. He'd say, Shimo, a house built on lies settles crooked, and once it starts settling, it doesn't stop. I remember. I stood up, wrapped the level carefully in its towel. I need you to call Barnes. Tell him we're not settling. Tell him Monday's hearing is just the beginning. Ethan smiled. Already did. Ruth confirmed 4 witnesses for the church meeting. Pastor Jim finally agreed to schedule it, Tuesday night, 7 o'clock. What changed his mind? Dale. Ethan pulled out his phone, showed me a text message. He told Jim that if the church wouldn't stand up for one of its own deacons, he'd withdraw his family's 3-generation membership. Jim called him back in 10 minutes. I felt something shift. Not hope. I was too tired for hope. but something close to it, the sense that the foundation might hold after all. What about Marcus? His lawyer confirmed he'll attend. Probably thinks he can charm his way through it. Ethan put his phone away. But here's the thing, we don't need to charm anyone. We just need to tell the truth and let it sit there. Through the window, I watched the snow bury everything, the dock, the boat, the broken ice, all of it disappearing under white, clean, and false, and temporary. But spring was coming, snow melts, ice breaks, and what's underneath, the truth of things, that stays. I walked to the workbench in the corner, pulled out my grandfather's toolbox. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth, was a manila folder I'd been building all week. Copies of every document, every deed, every forged signature, every witness statement, every piece of evidence that Marcus had done this before, would do it again, and needed to be stopped. I added Glenda's affidavit to the folder, added the notary seal records Dale had pulled, added the police report about the stolen seal, the timeline of Marcus's properties, the bank freeze letter. Then I placed the level on top, right on the folder, the bubble centered perfectly. There, I said. That's what we're bringing Tuesday night. Ethan looked at the folder. You're bringing the level? I am. I wrapped it back in the towel. Grandpa taught me to check foundations. This meeting's a foundation. Everything else builds from there. So yeah, I'm bringing the level. We sat there for a while longer, watching the fire die, watching the snow fall, not talking because there wasn't anything left to say. Finally, Ethan stood up. I'm heading back to the motel. You coming? In a bit. He left. Engine starting outside, headlights sweeping across the cabin windows, then gone. I sat alone in the dark with my grandfather's level and a folder full of truth and the sound of snow hitting the roof like 1,000 small accusations. And I thought about Linda, wherever she was, in Marcus's rental property, warm and safe and thinking she'd won. Tuesday night she'd find out different, not because I wanted to hurt her, but because some things have to be said out loud or they keep festering in the dark. I picked up my phone, typed a message to Barnes. Ooh, I'm ready. Let's finish this. His reply came back in seconds. See you in court Monday, then church Tuesday. One way or another, this ends this week. I put the phone down, put another log on the fire, watched the flames catch and grow, pushing back the dark. Outside, the snow kept falling, but I wasn't cold anymore. Monday morning, the courtroom smelled like old wood and floor wax and the nervous sweat of people waiting for justice. Attorney Barnes sat beside me at the plaintiff's table, 3-ring binder open, documents arranged in perfect order. Marcus's lawyer, a man in a suit that cost more than my truck, sat across the aisle, checking his watch like he had somewhere better to be. The judge was a woman named Hartley, 60-something, reading glasses on a chain, the kind of judge who'd seen every con and hustle 3 counties had to offer. She reviewed our amended injunction for 10 minutes without speaking. The only sound was pages turning and the radiator hissing steam. Finally, she looked up. Mr. Gaines, is your client present? Marcus's lawyer stood. No, Your Honor, Mr. Gaines is attending to business matters out of state. I'm authorized to speak on his behalf. I see. Judge Hartley made a note. And Mrs. Holloway? Also unavailable, Your Honor. She's provided a written statement. The judge's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. Mr. Barnes, walk me through this. Barnes stood, cleared his throat. Your Honor, the evidence shows a clear pattern of fraud. The signature on the spousal consent waiver was forged using a stolen notary seal, stolen from Ms. Glenda Tarver, who has provided an affidavit. The seal in question was reported stolen September 12th, yet appears on documents dated as late as November 15th. We have testimony from Ms. Tarver, confirming she never notarized Mr. Holloway's signature. We also have evidence that Mr. Gaines attempted to bribe Ms. Tarver to leave the jurisdiction before this hearing. He slid a flash drive across the bench. Recording of that conversation is on here, Your Honor. Judge Hartley took the drive, looked at Marcus's lawyer. Counselor. Your Honor, my client denies any wrongdoing. The refinance was executed with full knowledge and consent of both parties. If there are irregularities in the notarization, that's a matter for Ms. Tarver and the Secretary of State, not this court. Except, Barnes said, we have 3 other properties where Mr. Gaines used the same stolen seal, same notary, same pattern. County records are in the binder, Section 4. The judge flipped to Section 4, read for another 5 minutes. When she looked up, her face was hard. I'm granting the emergency injunction. Deed transfer is frozen pending criminal investigation. Mr. Holloway is to be restored to full property access immediately. Mrs. Holloway's restraining order is vacated pending review. She banged the gavel once. And someone tell Mr. Gaines that if he doesn't appear for the next hearing, I'll issue a bench warrant. This court does not appreciate parties who can't be bothered to defend themselves. Barnes smiled. Thank you, Your Honor. We walked out into cold January sunlight. Sleet had turned to rain overnight, washing away the snow, leaving everything wet and raw and new. You did it, Barnes said. The house is yours. Deed's frozen. She can't touch it. But I didn't feel like I'd won. Not yet. What about Tuesday? I asked. Church meeting? Barnes shrugged. That's not legal. That's something else. But Vern, you don't need it anymore. You've got the injunction. You've got your house back. It's not about the house anymore. He studied my face. No, I suppose it's not. Tuesday night, the church fellowship hall was packed. 40, maybe 50 people, sitting in folding chairs that scraped against linoleum tile every time someone shifted. The smell of old coffee and Ruth's lavender sachet mixed with the rain coming through open windows. Outside, a steady drizzle tapped on the metal roof. Pastor Jim stood at the front, looking like a man who wished he was anywhere else. We're here for an accountability meeting, he said. Not a trial, not a judgment. A conversation between brothers and sisters in Christ about truth and reconciliation. I sat in the front row, Dale beside me, Ruth across the aisle. Ethan stood near the back, phone in his pocket, recording. Linda sat 3 rows behind me. I'd seen her come in, face pale, Marcus's lawyer beside her whispering instructions, but Marcus himself hadn't shown. Empty chair next to Linda, like an accusation. I stood up, walked to the front, placed the carpenter's level on the table Pastor Jim had set up. It landed with a soft thunk that carried in the silence. My grandfather gave me this level, I said. Taught me to use it when I was 8. He said a level doesn't care about feelings or excuses. It just tells you what's true. I pulled out the 3-ring binder, opened it to the first page. Here's what's true. On November 15th, someone forged my signature on a refinance application. That signature was notarized by a seal stolen from Glenda Tarver 2 months earlier. I held up the document. Here's the police report proving the seal was stolen. Here's Glenda's affidavit saying she never notarized my signature. Here's the recording of Marcus Gaines trying to pay her $10,000 to leave town before yesterday's hearing. I set each document on the table as I named it, building a wall of paper between truth and lies. Here's 3 other properties where Marcus used the same pattern. Forged signatures, stolen seal, foreclosures that left families homeless. I looked at Linda. And here's proof that my wife helped him do it. Emails planning the refinance, text messages coordinating property showings, Margaret Posey's testimony that she heard Linda coaching Marcus on fake renovation expenses. Linda stood up. That's not... Sit down, Pastor Jim said quietly. You'll have your chance. She sat. I pulled out the vintage pen, the one Marcus had used to sign the guest book at the housewarming party, the one Dale had analyzed. This pen belonged to Marcus Gaines. The ink in it matches the ink on my forged signature. I set it on the table next to the level. Judge Hartley agreed. Yesterday she granted an emergency injunction freezing the deed transfer pending criminal investigation. Murmurs through the crowd. Someone said, "Thank God." I looked at the empty chair next to Linda. Marcus Gaines was invited to this meeting. He declined to come. Because men who forge documents don't defend themselves. They just move on to the next victim. I picked up the level, held it horizontal, bubble-centered. My grandfather used to say, "A house built on lies settles crooked." This whole thing, the refinance, the forged papers, the restraining order claiming I was dangerous, all of it was built on lies, and now it's settling, crooked and broken, the way lies always do. I set the level down. The bubble stayed centered. I'm not here for an apology. I'm not here for reconciliation. I'm here so everyone knows what happened. So the next time Marcus Gaines shows up with a checkbook and a smile, somebody remembers this moment and says no. I closed the binder, started to sit down, then the door opened. A woman walked in, rain-soaked, graying hair plastered to her face, eyes sharp and sad. She looked around the room until she found Linda. "I'm Diane Gaines," she said. "Marcus's ex-wife." The room went silent. Diane walked to the front, pulled a folder from her purse. He did the same thing to me 6 years ago. Forged my signature on a home equity loan, used Glenda Tarver's stolen seal, the same one. By the time I figured it out, my house was in foreclosure and he was gone. She set the folder on the table next to mine. This is my divorce decree, and the fraud report I filed, and the police investigation that went nowhere because I couldn't prove Marcus took the seal. She looked at me. But you can. You've got witnesses I didn't have, evidence I couldn't find, and a room full of people who actually give a damn. She turned to Linda. He told me I was paranoid too, said I was imagining things, that I was too emotional to understand business, and I believed him. For months, I believed him, until I lost everything. Linda's face had gone white. Her hands shook in her lap. He's not coming tonight, Diane said, because he never does. He moves on, finds someone new, does it again. She picked up Marcus's pen from the table. This pen? He used the same one on my papers. I'd recognize it anywhere. She set it down hard. So no, this isn't about reconciliation. This is about stopping him and anyone who helped him. Pastor Jim cleared his throat. Mrs. Holloway, do you have anything to say? Linda stood, looked at me, at Diane, at the papers on the table, at the level sitting there, Bubble perfectly centered, telling the truth she couldn't argue with. I want a lawyer, she whispered. Then you should call one, I said. But first, you should sign the quitclaim deed my attorney prepared, and walk away before this becomes criminal charges. She looked at Marcus's empty chair, at the door, at me, then she turned and left. No words, no defense, just gone. The door closed behind her, rain kept falling, and the level stayed on the table, true and centered the way it had been from the start. Linda signed the quitclaim deed Thursday morning, no ceremony, no conversation, just her signature on a line, witnessed by Attorney Barnes and a notary who wasn't Glenda Tarver. She walked out of the office without looking at me, got into a car that wasn't Marcus's, and drove away. I never saw her again. Marcus settled Friday afternoon. His lawyer called Barnes, said his client wanted to resolve the matter without further litigation. $50,000, paid in certified check. In exchange, I wouldn't pursue criminal charges. Barnes asked if I wanted to fight for more. I told him no, I wanted it finished. The check arrived Monday. I deposited half in Ethan's account, kept the rest for the legal bills and the time I'd lost. Money couldn't fix what had been broken, but it could at least acknowledge the damage. Tuesday morning, I went back to the house, my house. The locks had been changed back. Deputy Hayes handed me the new keys himself, looking embarrassed. For what it's worth, he said. I'm glad it worked out. Thanks. I walked through empty rooms. Linda had taken her things, clothes, photos, the kitchen table she'd inherited from her grandmother, left everything else. The couch I'd built, the bed, the curtains, the life we'd tried to build together, stripped down to studs and bones. I stood in the living room, carpenter's level in my hand, and placed it on the mantel where it belonged. The bubble settled, centered, true. Ethan found me there an hour later, staring at nothing. You okay? Getting there. He walked through the rooms with me, checked the foundation the way I'd taught him, ran his hand along the beams, tested the floorboards for squeaks. Place is solid, he said. You built it right. Doesn't feel right. Not yet, but it will. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Dad, I've been thinking. My firm's opening a regional office in Columbus. 2 hours from here. I could transfer, be closer. You don't have to do that. I know, but I want to. He looked around the house, and I was thinking, this place is too big for one person. Maybe I could rent the upstairs, help with the mortgage, keep an eye on the old man. Something loosened in my chest. Not hope, exactly. More like the first breath after holding it too long. You'd want to live here? I would, if you'd have me. I looked at my son, 35 years old, civil engineer, good man, better than I'd managed to be at his age. We'd need to fix up the upstairs bathroom, I said. Tiles cracked, faucet leaks. Then we'll fix it. Ethan smiled. Together. 3 weeks later, we drove out to the county recorder's office. Warm February morning, smell of wet earth and early thaw, crocuses pushing through last year's leaves, the kind of day that makes you believe in spring even when winter's not done. Inside, the clerk processed the paperwork, deed transfer, from Vernon Holloway to Ethan Holloway, clean title, no liens, no ghosts. I signed my name, Real signature this time. Ethan signed his. The clerk stamped it official. Outside, I handed Ethan the carpenter's level, walnut frame warm in the sunlight, brass fittings catching light the way Marcus's pen used to, except honest. "You'll need this more than I do, I said. "Dad, take it. Grandpa gave it to me. I'm giving it to you. 3 generations. Unbroken." Ethan held it like it mattered. Because it did. "What are you going to use?" "I'll buy another one. Or maybe I'll just trust that you'll keep things straight." I looked at the courthouse behind us. Marble steps warming in the sun, sparrows building nests in the eaves. "Besides, I built the house. You're the one who's going to make it a home." We walked to the truck. Ethan set the level carefully in the toolbox, buckled it in like it might break. It wouldn't. That level had survived 3 generations of hard use. It would survive 3 more. We drove back to the house, Ethan's house now, legally, though it still felt like mine, and spent the afternoon working on the upstairs bathroom, ripping out cracked tile, fixing the faucet that had been dripping since Christmas, working side by side the way my father and I used to, the way his father taught us both. Outside, the last snow melted, robins sang, and somewhere on the lake, ice broke with a sound like relief. The foundation held, the house stood, and for the first time in months I slept without wondering if I'd wake up to find it gone. Some houses are built with nails, some are built with trust. Only one stands when winter ends. 6 weeks later, late April, Ethan and I drove out to Dale's cabin with fishing rods and a cooler full of sandwiches Ruth had packed. The lake had thawed completely. No ice, just ripples catching sunlight, lily pads starting to emerge near the shore, warm breeze carrying the smell of fresh-cut grass and wildflowers, trillium and bloodroot pushing through the leaf litter. Dale was already on the dock, 2 lines in the water, coffee percolating on the camp stove behind him. "About time you showed up," he said. "Fish have been biting since dawn." We set up our gear. Didn't talk much at first, just cast lines, watch the water, let the morning settle around us the way mornings do when you're not carrying weight anymore. After a while, Ethan's phone buzzed. He pulled it out, smiled at the screen. "Sarah's asking how the house looks, wants to come visit next month." "Sarah?" "Woman I've been seeing, civil engineer, met her on the Columbus project." He pocketed the phone, looked almost embarrassed. "Thought I'd introduce you, if that's okay." "More than okay." Dale reeled in an empty line. "So the house is done? All fixed up?" "Getting there," Ethan said. "Replace the upstairs tile, fix the faucet. Dad's teaching me how to refinish the back deck." "Keeping him busy then?" "Someone has to." Ethan glanced at me. Otherwise he'd just sit around remembering what it felt like to build the place. I didn't argue. He wasn't wrong. A fish jumped near the dock, circles spreading outward, disappearing into sunlight. "You ever regret it?" Dale asked quietly. "Fighting that hard? Could have just taken Marcus's buyout, walked away clean." I thought about that, about the money I could have had, the months I could have saved, the pain I could have avoided. "No," I said finally, "because if I'd walked away, Marcus would still be out there doing it to someone else. And Ethan wouldn't be living in a house his grandfather's hands built." Dale nodded, poured fresh coffee from the percolator, steam rising, mixing with the smell of warm dock wood and lake water. Between our tackle boxes, the carpenter's level sat where Ethan had placed it that morning, not because we needed it, just because it belonged there. 3 generations of hands had held it, 3 generations of men who'd learned that truth doesn't bend, even when everything else does. The bubble sat centered, perfectly level, the way it always had been. "You know what Grandpa used to say?" Ethan asked. "Which thing?" "That a level's no good if you ignore what it tells you." He picked it up, checked it out of habit, set it back down. Took me a long time to understand what he meant. And now? Now I think he meant that knowing the truth is easy, living by it is the hard part. Dale raised his coffee cup. "To living by it, then." We touched cups, tin against tin, a sound like bells or wind chimes or something honest. A pair of Canada geese flew overhead, heading north, calling to each other in voices that carried across the water. Spring migration, moving forward, leaving winter behind where it belonged. I cast my line back into the lake. Didn't matter if I caught anything, wasn't really fishing for fish anyway, was fishing for peace, for the sound of water lapping against the dock, for the warmth of sun on my back, for the knowledge that some things, family, integrity, foundations built straight, those things hold, even when winter comes, especially when winter comes. Ethan's line went taut. He reeled in slow and steady the way I'd taught him, brought up a base, decent size, flashing silver in the sunlight. "Nice one," Dale said. Ethan unhooked it carefully, held it for a moment, then lowered it back into the water, watched it swim away. "Why'd you let it go?" I asked. He smiled. "Because I already got what I came for." The fish disappeared into dark water. The geese called from somewhere far off. And the level sat between us on the dock, bubble-centered, telling the truth it had always told. Some houses are built with nails, some are built with trust. Only one stands when winter ends,